Just a quick video on how to quickly visualize issues across pages with the SEMRush crawl report in Google Sheets. So the end result, what it's going to look like is something like this. You're going to have your page URLs, you're going to have all of your issues, then you're going to have a quick visualization of the summary of how many issues there are across how many pages. So we can quickly sort by the pages that are the worst or the patterns of pages that are the worst. You see that like all these pages have 24 issues, all these pages have 23 issues. And then from there you can kind of run through and see, okay, which issues either seem to be the most pressing or most common, so that we can kind of identify and isolate those patterns to make those changes. So this lists, 107 issues. Is uncompressed JavaScript and CSS file really that much of an issue? No, but you can fix a couple of those files, and then suddenly you fix them across all of your pages if all of your pages are referencing those specific requests. So it's like a nice, quick, and dirty little tool, and you can kind of build it yourself. So we'll follow along and do that. So here you can see that the issue, as I said, is kind of that you can see a list of pages with specific issues, or you can see a list of issues and then drill down into their specific pages, but there's no way to kind of get that quick summary. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the export, and we're going to export the crawled pages with all issues. This is sort of like the mega export feature. And depending on the size of your site, that's going to be like 1 MB or 2 MB file. You're going to go over to Google Sheets. You're going to go to File, Import, and you're going to upload that downloaded file. And then I always insert new sheet. So now that we've imported this, you can see that it's not that great, the way that it currently is out of the box. But what we can do is we can sort of run over, we can shrink these a little bit so that we're just seeing the ones and zeros with the different numbers. And we can take this top row and we can make this a little bit easier to visualize. So I'm just going to take that and turn them that way. And then shrink that a little bit. And then make sure that's down. Okay. So at this point, I'm going to insert one above here so that we have this row. And I'm going to insert one in front of the issues that we have. So now we have, and then I'm just going to take this and hide these. So now we have these two, this row and this column that we created. So I'm just going to go in and I'm going to create a sum of everything in C from C3 down to the rest of C. And that's going to give me a sum of everything in this column. I'm going to copy this, and then I'm going to drag through to the rest of it, paste it, and that's going to give me a summary of all of the issues across all of the pages in each column. I'm going to do the same thing over here for the rows. In Excel, you can pretty easily sort by row. So you could get an aggregate, the most issues that you have over here to the least amount of issues. It's a little bit harder in Google Sheets. It's beyond the scope of this sort of like quick tut. So let's go ahead and get a sum of I always confuse myself here. So we want from C3 to CN3. And I just want to make sure that it was, in fact, CN. No, it goes to CO now. So I'm going to say CO so I don't miss that last row. And then I'm going to copy this. I'm going to drag it to the bottom. Now I just hit, on a Mac, Command-Shift down to hold down and drag to the bottom so that I could quickly get down there without scrolling a lot. And then you can just do Command-Shift up, and as long as all those cells are filled, it'll let you back up there. So now, because we want to start sorting these by most issue, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this row and I'm just going to freeze up to the current row. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the column. View, freeze, up to the current row. Up to the current column. Column B. And then I actually wanted this one to do both of these. So now I can kind of go back and forth and I can see where I'm at. So at this point, I'm going to take this row and I'm going to go in and format. I'm going to use conditional formatting. I'm going to choose the color scale option, and then I like green to red. It's automatically going to put red at the highest. So the more red or the more yellow, the more issues you're going to see. And anything that's green is going to be a 0 or a non-issue. So, and that becomes useful for us later as well. So here I'm grabbing this row and I want to do the same thing. I want to add a color scale for this row, make sure that I have the right row selected, choose my color scale, and I have that loaded in there. And then I want to do it for everything else. Now, if you have a lot of URLs, it's going to be tougher to grab this sort of aggregate. But let's try and see what happens, because there are a fair amount of URLs here. So again, I held Command Shift and I went right, and that took me to the end of all the rows that had, or all the columns that had something in them. And then I did again Command Shift down, and that took me to the bottom, so that these are all now highlighted. So now if I add another rule, it'll automatically grab that range that we just selected. I can go over to color scale and see how long it takes for it to generate this. It looks like it's still working. So again, if you have a long, if you have a big site or a lot of pages, you might want to split them up. Like we might want to take the subdomain for parts.domain.com or blog.domain.com, separate them out into their own tabs, and then that way it would be a little bit easier to sort by which ones we want, and then also get a better aggregate idea of, okay, how is blog versus parts versus, you know, the root domain doing. But once this is all said and done, what you end up with is something like this. This is a much smaller site, so it's a lot easier to do. And you can sort of see when I sorted A to Z here, or Z to A, to get the most issues from the least issues, that it did a nice job of showing me that. And so we can do that here. Do I want to wait until it's ready? No. Okay, great. So now we know, just sorting through these, which pages seem to have the most issues. And we can also go over here, go to data, create a filter, and we can just simply look at filter by condition, text contains, blog.domain.com, something like that. And now we're able to get a quick aggregate of the blog or any blog issues. And you can see that the blog here is actually quite small. So yeah, that's it. And if it ever does finish, maybe I'll let you know. Thanks.